Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to have a little bit of a different video. We are going to be talking about cashless cash envelopes and sinking funds, okay? If you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Janelle, and on here I do all things budgeting. I also talk about grocery hauls, meal planning, lifestyle videos. So if that is something that you're interested in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So many of you guys wanted to know how I use the cashless system to do all of my cashless envelopes and sinking funds. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. But before we get into that, I kind of just want to give you some background knowledge, okay? So whenever I started budgeting, I did use cash, and cash was king, okay? Cash was king for me. I had debt. I needed to get out of debt, and I wanted to start accomplishing goals because I had, at that point, I think when I started budgeting, I had got back into my field and we wanted to buy a house and just start moving on with life. So I started taking out cash to do all of my regular spending. And then I want to say after I kind of got out of my credit card debt, I started doing sinking funds, and I was taking out the cash originally for my sinking funds as well. Whenever the pandemic hit in 2020, I was just learning about high yield savings account, and I had opened up a Capital One checking and savings account. And I was just thinking to myself, like, why would I keep the cash? Because I would have to put the cash back in the bank to pay whatever card I used, because I realized that a lot of the stuff that I was using out of my sinking funds was on a credit card. This is also around the time that I stopped using a debit card and went straight to using credit cards, because I'm in an industry where I see people's accounts get hacked all the time and they lose their money, and it becomes very devastating. When you use a credit card, if they use money, those people will go and get their money back, okay? All hands on deck when it's someone else's money, not your own. So this was kind of like the turning point for me. So I started putting all of my sinking funds into my Capital One savings account, and I was still doing cash. However, once we got deeper into the pandemic, it started becoming a little bit, it was a little bit more of an inconvenience for me, because my job had changed their hours, and those were the hours that the bank were open. And then on Saturdays, like, they weren't open. And it was just a whole shift that just made it more and more, apparent for me that I should be doing a cashless system. And whenever I went cashless, the first way that I went was I put my money into into another debit card, which was the Capital One checking account, and I put all the money in there, and then I would use that debit card to buy everything that I needed. And then eventually I switched over from swiping that card to using one card to do all of my spending. And then I've been going back and forth with just making one big payment at the end of the month, or paying it weekly, or paying it bi-weekly, or just paying whenever. And so that brings me here today. Okay, so I am a cashless budgeter. I don't keep any cash on hand, but I do have one sinking fund that is cash, and that's in our household account, and it is for a weather envelope. And that came around when in 2021 we had a freeze storm here, and you couldn't go anywhere, and we had neighbors going out and getting money. Not getting money, getting food for people and things of that sort. And yes, there's like Zelle and Cash App and stuff like that, but sometimes you may just be talking to someone, or you hear a word, and it's kind of easier to just give someone cash, like, hey, here's $10, y'all can keep the rest. Can you just get me this bread and that, and things of that sort. And then after we were, here in Texas, we have floods. You just never know what's going to happen. So I have a few dollars put aside, that if for some reason we had those things like a hurricane and stuff, and you just could not use your debit card or credit card or Zelle or Cash App, we have some cash on hand to function until that happens. But other than that, we are fully cashless. Now, to start off with, we're going to start off with talking about cash envelopes. Okay, so cash envelopes is a term that I learned from sort of kind of the Budget Mom and Dave Ramsey. They kind of have it a little bit different in a sense, but you get kind of the main drift of what they're trying to say. So with my cashless cash envelopes, I use my Capital One Quicksilver card currently, we're talking about currently, to fund all of the things. Originally, well, actually, before I get to that, let me explain something, because I've been watching some of my favorite budgeters and some of them have been talking about this, and I'm like, that's why you need to do a monthly budget. But I do a monthly budget, okay? But I do a paycheck to paycheck budget as well. However, my paycheck to paycheck only lasts for that month. So currently I have a $200 buffer that sits in my account. And whenever I get paid, let's just say for June, right? Perfect example. Some people say they don't get to have that magic month, and that's because you're doing a paycheck to paycheck. So you're pretty much budgeting by every paycheck. I budget paycheck to paycheck for the month. So for the month of June, I get 3 paychecks, but both of my first 2 paychecks will cover all of the bills for the month of June, because those are the paychecks that I'm receiving in June are only going to June bills. And then even though I won't be getting a paycheck until July 14th, the buffer that I have in my account will cover whatever bills from the 1st until the 14th until I get my actual paycheck. And then that paycheck, or the next 2 paychecks that I get in July, will still cover all of those bills for the month. It's just that there might be a little bit maneuvering around. So the reason I stated that is so that you guys can understand why I kind of got to this space. So originally when I was doing my cashless envelopes, I would actually, I would cash out my money based on my paychecks. And so with that being said, sometimes I would go some time without money, or I would be taking out money in a different month, even though I was still in a previous month, and it started to interfere with how much money I had to pay towards debt or do other stuff. I was taking money and rolling it over. So what I decided to do was, hey, Janelle, you already know what you're going to be budgeting for the entire month for all of these envelopes. Give it to yourself up front. So what I do is, for my cashless envelopes with my Capital One Quicksilver card that I currently use, I have money on that account, and I give myself that amount of money to use. So at the beginning of the month, I start using that money for my groceries, my gas, my personal, and my spending, right? And then whenever I get paid, I will take whatever money, whether it's in the beginning of the year, I was getting paid weekly, so I was putting that money in weekly. Now I get paid bi-weekly, so I take that money bi-weekly and put that money into my Capital One checking account and let it sit there. If I want to, I can then say, let me look at the last couple of weeks or where we are in the month. Do I have enough money or some money that I can go ahead and pay out? Sometimes it can get confusing, just depending. So sometimes I'll do it that way. Sometimes I'll wait until the end of the month and I can make sure that I have all of my expenses written down, and then I can just kind of make one transfer. But I like to be difficult sometimes, so that doesn't always work out that way either. So I will do that, and then I only use that card for those expenses. Now, the reason why I give myself the money up front is because I was starting to find out, as inflation got worse and worse, that the money that I was allocating every 2 weeks was just not enough. And it didn't mean that I was going over my allotment. It just meant that I couldn't get all of the things that I needed at the beginning of the month. And so it would make it seem as though I was going over budget each week or every 2 weeks, and I really wasn't. So I figured, give yourself the money up front, get the things that you need, and then you can pace yourself thereafter. And so I've actually really been enjoying it. If you guys have been watching my videos, you will see how I have gone from, spending over $300-400 a month to, I want to say last month, I was only over by $17. This is also going to be a discipline thing, because you've got to be disciplined so that you're not overspending on your accounts. And because I do a weekly check-in, I can see where I am, and that is the pressure that I need to be like, hey, Janelle, you need to roll that back, okay? Roll it back, roll it back, roll it back, okay? But I do have many credit cards, so I do just want to state that I will sometimes change the cards that I'm using. So actually right now I have a Citi card, and I get 5% back on whatever category I use the most. If I'm only using it for one category, then guess what? That's the category that gets that 5%. So right now I use my Citi card to pay for all of my grocery things. And I've been making some moolah on that, okay, y'all? Sometimes you gotta maximize your credit cards, and that's just a me thing. And so I use that, and then everything else, which is groceries, personal and spending, is still on my Quicksilver card, although I'm thinking that I may want to change it and maybe use my PayPal card for a little bit, because I get 2% back on everything else, and that would be kind of like the next best deal. And that's really just to maximize, these rewards. My PayPal card does give me actual cash back, and so does my Citi. So those come in handy whenever I have extra spending that's going on. I can use those rewards to cover those spending. So sometimes you'll be like, I watched Janelle's lunches. She didn't have lunch for 2 days out of that past week, but she also did not tell us that she bought food. And sometimes that's what it is. I may have $50-60 and I can be like, hey, I have that money. I can go and get something to eat and pay that back. And then I don't confuse myself on like I added money, but I subtracted it and all those different things, okay? So that is how my cashless cash envelopes work. They really are straightforward, but there are two ways. You can use it the way that I do it, which is I use my credit cards, I get cash back and rewards and things of that sort, and then I pay it back either on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis. It's just whatever works for you. Or you can still kind of do the cash envelope method, but debit version, meaning that you only have the money that you budgeted in the checking account, and once it's gone, it really is gone. And it is very embarrassing to go and swipe your card and it's declined because there isn't any money in there. But that would just be whatever works for you. Now for my sinking funds, y'all know that my budgeting journey is very all over the place, because I technically have two budgets. I have a personal budget and I have a household budget. So we're going to really talk more so about my household budget. So we have a Discover card that I added my husband on maybe about like 3 years ago. And that is our household credit card that we use for everything household. So if we're buying household goods, if we're buying health things, I try to keep everything on that card, because then it's a lot easier to manage. There's just one transfer. I put all the money together and then I just transfer it to the Discover card. And I hate when I have to use another card to like go and do something else, because I'm like, oh my gosh, now I got to figure out if this account's attached to that account, so this, that, and the third. But I think at this point, all of the credit cards are attached to all of our checking accounts. So with our household account, we have our credit union account, and then we have an Ally checking and savings. So our Ally savings, we have all of our sinking funds in there. And so what I like to do is, for there, if I'm using money out of that account, since I get 6 transfers, I try to go in on a weekly basis, calculate everything that has been spent, and then move them to the checking account, and then go ahead and pay the card back off. It is a lot easier that way, and keeping up with it doesn't always work out that way for me, but that is in a perfect world how I would like to have it set up. And then I have my checking account, which y'all might see in 2024. I may change it up a little bit because that's what I'm known for. But I will be moving some of those things over to the Ally checking account and taking it out of the Capital One checking account. So you guys stay tuned for that for next year. But that is how I set up, or how I use my credit cards to do my cashless system. Now there are a whole bunch of different budgeting apps and things of that sort for you guys to keep up with. So I used to use the Good Budget app, which is free. You can use it on your iPad, your iPhone, and your computer. I think it is also Android free. And I would use that to kind of keep up with, you know, how much money I have in each account. And the good thing is it also lets you track sinking funds as well too. So I would be able to do that. But for me, I'm so in tune with my budget, y'all. I kind of already know if like I'm in line when I'm going grocery shopping or for some of my other categories. So I started to get away from doing the Good Budget app, but I really loved it. I just realized that as much as I want to go digital, I just don't want to go digital. And so I went back to tracking it in like a little notebook. So I have my current tracking mini binder here, and this is where I just put all of my expenses. Whenever I get home and stuff like that, I will just go to the credit card and I'll look at the most recent transactions. Because I'm only using it for that, like it's not that hard to go and look and be like, okay, this is what I spent for the week, and I make sure that I notated it in here, and then I'll share this with you guys on my weekly check-in. And so there's many different ways that you can track your cashless envelopes. I used to, when I started off with cashless envelopes, I also used to use this binder here that I would carry in my actual purse, and I had dividers for each of them, and then I would track them there. And then you can also just track them in like your workbook or whatever you're comfortable with how you're tracking them. I had cash dividers, and for a hot little minute I would have the dividers with a index card in between, and I also tracked it that way as well too, because it was still like I could walk around with it and I knew how much money I could spend. And those came in really handy, especially when I was doing the debit version of the cashless envelope system, because I didn't want to go and swipe and there wasn't any money in there, because like I said, that could be very much so embarrassing. Now when I swipe, I should still feel very fearful, but I know that if I go over, that means I just lose money in the future, because what I will do is whenever I'm budgeting, I take that money out of my commissions to pay back. So the more money I'm overspending, the less money I have to achieve my goals, pay off my debt, and save and things of that sort. So that is like my motivation to make sure that I'm staying within budget. And like I said, I'm getting these rewards and things of that sort, so that kind of helps me out too. And so y'all, that's kind of how I use my cashless cash system. Like I said, if you guys have credit cards, like look at your credit card and just make sure that, you know, you have the discipline. If you're really thinking about going cashless, like take it a step at a time and do like what I did, which was I started off with the debit version. Get a whole separate checking account. Don't share the checking account with your main account where you're paying bills and doing other things. And then just move that money over, and you're still using a debit card. You're not over, you know, spending or anything. You just don't have to have that physical cash, especially with the times that we're in and people, you know, robbery and things of like sort like that. It's just a little bit more safe to not have the money on you. But, you know, on a card or something, if you lose the card, you can just call and cancel it and kind of just wait for a new one. So that would be your option if you don't want to go extreme and go straight to using credit cards. I also think that there's like a misconception like, oh, well, what if I don't pay it off by the statement balance and things of that sort? I always make sure that like if I'm paying it at the end of the month and my statement balance, you know, there's always going to be money that was paid towards a card. But let's just say for last month, was over budget by $17.05. So I was able to pay out everything else that was on that card by the statement balance. So this month that we're in now in June, I only owed $17.05. but already for the month, I've already put like $166 towards there. I don't know, I'm so on point with that number. I hope that was the amount that I put towards that Quicksilver card. So I've already paid off the statement balance and then some. So whenever the card closes, if I haven't, clearly I haven't because I'm swiping and getting gas and things of that sort, whatever that new statement balance is, it will still get paid off because remember, I do a monthly budget. So I already have that money allotted to be paid off within the 2 paychecks or 3 paychecks that I get in the month. So I'm never worried about having to pay interest. And I want to say ever since I did my transfer balance, what are we in? Last year, August, maybe? Let me make sure. I'm not going to say last year, August, but I'm going to say at least since the beginning of this year, I have not gotten any interest. I mean, granted, when I really went over and wasn't paying that back in full, I probably had got a little bit of interest, but the way that I'm explaining it to you, you would not get a interest. You would always have money that is owed, but as long as you're paying that off by your statement balance, then you are good. So, and that's how I'm also building my credit, even though my credit score is actually really nice right now, y'all. So I just wanted to share that with you guys because I know a lot of people are kind of just wondering how I have my cashless system and how I make it work. And there's a lot of behind the scenes that I don't show y'all sometimes. I do want to show y'all. I might have to do like a speeded up version so y'all can see, but I'm literally like writing down all of the things that I've spent and I'm making sure that like I did remove them because I have my binder, and as soon as I spend money, I try to just put it there, but I don't always remember if I paid it back because it's always in a lump sum of money. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I pay with this? What did I pay with this? What did I do here? So I try to keep a line item on just like a different sheet of everything that I've paid for and then what I'm paying for this week or that week and things of that sort, just to stay. So just depending on how simple you want your budget to be, I think the debit option could work for you because that money is gone the minute you spend it. If you want to be a little bit more involved in how the money is flowing, then you can use it that way. Like I said, I use it because I sometimes need more money at the beginning of the month than I do at the end of the month, and I just never know where I'm gonna land. So even if I'm like, I'm gonna give myself an extra $50, well, what if I needed an extra 70? Now I feel like I don't have the money to spend. So I really think it's just about you and your lifestyle and making sure that you're still living within your means. And that is what I am trying to achieve in my budget. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one.